Well, hello and welcome to our backyard garden in the South Carolina upstate. It is July 13th, 2024. This is our 23rd episode this year, and we're going to start off as we always do in our backyard on this hillside where we have our Cleome forest. As any of you who have been watching this know, the Cleome are these interesting flowers on these big long stalks. These have all come up from seed from previous years, and typically when I do these videos later in the day or in the evening, these Cleome in particular have wilted from the sun. We're at a point right now where we're in the 90s every day. It'll be about 93 later today, and I wanted to show these off while they're still looking good today. Again, all of these have come up from seed, just full of color back here. Really, really pretty view that we have out our back porch. With Cleome, you have kind of a mix of sort of a lavender color and then a light pink. And there are even a few, not many, but a few that are even a lighter pink yet, almost a white color. And this is something that bees are very fond of. You almost always will see a few bumblebees floating around. They will grow just about anywhere, as these have proved. We have a few up here that are growing out of the sidewalk, and then some back in here growing up through the bricks in our fire pit. And over on this side, ones that are growing up out of the stones on the far side of the fire pit. So they don't necessarily need a great growing place. The soil around here is pretty fertile, but you can put the seeds in just about anywhere and they will come up, and they just keep coming up. We thought we were only going to have 2 or 3 over here in the fire pit, and we have flowers everywhere. Now over here we have a yellow knockout rose. Needs to be deadheaded. If we did that a little more regularly, it would give us more flowers, but even with that, we do have a few flowers, and the plant overall is kind of struggling a little bit with black spots, so there's always that, unfortunately. And the really dominant flower here in this part of the garden is the white hydrangeas. They are at their peak right now. Very different than the blue and red hydrangeas that we get in the front yard, in that they are really a summer, midsummer bloomer. The others are spring, and they're all done for now. And before we pass, we do have a few more Asiatic lilies getting ready to bloom. We have a liatris here. We had a larger liatris in our front yard bed. These are bulbs with purple flowers on them. These are finished up, although the ones in the front are still blooming to some extent. Again, more lilies that are finished up, although we have some here that are getting ready to bloom within the next week or two, probably even in the next day or two for this one, and the others will come along a little bit later. Now these are bulbs that we put in this year, which is why they're a little bit later than they normally would be, but that's fine because it gives us color later into the year than we would normally have otherwise. Here we have a butterfly bush, largely finished, although it's giving us still a little bit of color. Another one down here, also pretty well finished up for the spring. Knockout rose here, largely finished up, and then more lilies that are going to be blooming. Some are already finished up, some still yet to go, and then some begonias that we've put in, along with some creeping jenny. That's this ground cover plant. It doesn't really flower, but it gives a nice appearance, a little different shade of green than what we usually get. A couple daylilies that are just about finished up. Most of our daylilies are done for the year. Begonias, bright red ones here, doing very well since they got put in a few weeks back. And then doing even better yet are these impatiens, just a regular impatiens, a standard one. We had tried going with New Guinea impatiens back here in our shady area along the pathway going down to the pond, but last year they really did not do very well. We thought, even though the soil was decent and they got enough water, we thought maybe they just didn't get enough sun. So we went back to this very basic type of impatiens, and these things have just gone crazy. They are easily 3 or 4 times the size that they were when we put them in just 3 or 4 weeks ago. So gotta love that. And then back in the shady part of the yard, really nothing going on too exciting right now. A lot of azaleas that are finished up. They're of course spring flowers. We have a wisteria back here, kind of struggling, but it's alive, and I think it'll slowly grow over the years. Got a couple hostas back in here. A lot of black-eyed Susans that we have allowed to just grow from seed out in the mulch here, and they're doing pretty well. And strangely enough, just kind of out of nowhere, I notice some azaleas blooming. I don't know why. This is definitely not their standard time of year. They're spring and fall, but here in the first week of July, they're blooming like crazy. Last week we had some blooms on our other wisteria here. This one has done very, very well. Looks like we have maybe a little tiny bit of a bloom there. Wisteria are funny. They bloom or they grow wild here in South Carolina, and you see them everywhere in the spring, and they usually are blooming in the about the middle of March, and you see purple flowers everywhere. But the domestic ones that we have in our yard bloom about a month later, and then you'll get the occasional little bloom that pops up periodically after that, even for maybe the next couple of months, and that's what we are seeing now. This tea rose has done very well. I've talked about this one many times. Kind of a multicolored rose, pink and white, and then when they first open up, they have a little bit of yellow as well before it gets bleached out. I'm just going to show off this kind of lemon yellow daylily. Not much left of our daylilies. They are rapidly finishing up, so I try to show them off when I can. This may be the last week for those. There's more vinca that we've put in. These are all grown from seed, and I have a hibiscus here, which has kind of struggled a little bit. Putting it in after the weather got really hot here was not ideal, but it's come back. I think it'll be okay. And we have another one in a couple of minutes that we'll show off. And then we have our gigantic knockout rose here with the bright red flowers. Just when you think this one is done for the time being, it comes out with yet another batch of flowers. It's a really beautiful plant. It struggled a little bit this year with deer having eaten a large chunk of it, but it came right back, and it's been just giving us flowers nonstop since March. Even our climbing roses up here, we'll get a better view of those in a minute. Up on top of the trellis, they're starting to give us some color again after taking a month or so off. We got our climbing rose here. This one just keeps putting out flowers. It struggles with black spot. If you notice, the canes are completely bare up to about this point, about 4 feet up, because of black spot. But it continues to put out flowers, and really nice, fragrant ones too. So this has been a really high performer for us. And interestingly enough, I'm just seeing, this is probably the only angle I can show it. Got some clematis growing up amongst our gardenias, and they're for the most part spring flowers, but they are blooming right now a little bit, so that's kind of nice to see. Now this is the other hibiscus. This one has done much better. It's a healthier plant right now, big bright green leaves. Hasn't done as much flower-wise, but we do have a big yellow flower that's about to come out. And then other things back in here are Veronica. They've kind of past their peak, but they're still giving us a lot of purple color for the next few weeks. This is a big favorite for the bees in the area. Also had some phlox and some sweet william, which is a type of dianthus back in here. Our calla lilies are done for the year, but they gave us some beautiful flowers in the late spring. Smaller zinnias here. Another dianthus, kind of a bright red type of dianthus here. And then various roses kind of scattered back amongst everything else. A nice bright yellow one there, some red ones. We've got some pink ones in the back. Some more clematis over there, and then the backdrop is jasmine. Still giving us some of its little white flowers. If you can see closely there, they're very fragrant. Usually a spring flower, but here in this area it's still blooming even now in mid-July. Some daisies back here too. Shasta daisies doing very well. And then as we come over this way, our butterfly bush still giving us lots of flowers. This really is about the only, out of the 4 butterfly bushes that we have in our yard, the only one that's still giving us a lot of color right now. Probably will need to be cut back at some point. It's actually growing a kind of an odd tree section. It's going straight up. It's hard to see in the back there, but this is all part of the same plant. It's one plant that we put in about 3 years ago, and it's just done amazingly well. Back in this area where we had our trampoline until a few weeks ago, we've put in quite a few flowers, and they're struggling to some extent, some doing better than others. The zinnias are finally starting to give us some small flowers. We've got some other zinnias that we bought just at Walmart. They've done very well. This bright purple color is not a color that we're used to with the usual zinnias that we grow. And we have some balloon flowers here. They're kind of done for the year. And then a little different type of zinnia over here. Marigolds. Got some nice gladiolas doing very well. These have not given us a ton of color, but they're it's better than nothing. They're not as well as they used to do a few years ago when we had first put them in, but these are ones that we've just put in this year, and they're giving us some really pretty flowers. And then this one, I bring this up every week. Somebody gave this to us. It's a very tropical sort of plant, and it gives us these amazing pink flowers in fairly large numbers, big clusters of them. It's a good place for it because this is not an area of the garden that typically gives us a lot of color. But trying to think what else we have over here. A few things that we've put in. This is an area that has typically struggled to some extent. We're not sure why exactly, but we're trying some different things to see what will come up or stay alive, I should say. Big grouping of plants here. Dahlias in this area. I blanked out for a second. Is wisteria is this one, of course. It's one of 4 that we have. It had a little problem a few weeks ago. A little section died off. You can see some dead flower or dead leaves in there, but the rest of it's doing well, so I think it'll survive. It almost didn't make it last year, but right now it looks pretty good. And we've got some more creeping jenny, some begonias, a couple of knockout roses. So there's a lot going on here. The key thing is getting this area watered on a regular basis because it's right out in the full sun. Our neighbor has a nice hydrangea that's coming out, a nice single one. Now their blue hydrangeas tend to bloom a little bit later in the year, interestingly enough, and they've got some that are still budding over here. So we'll still get some color back in here. This is our big wisteria. It's kind of taken over. I need to get over here and do a little bit of work to weed this section of the yard and cut back the wisteria a little bit, because it's growing up into our weeping cherry tree, and I don't want that. And then over here is the canna. These have a way of taking over. If you've been on these videos before with us, I'm not a big fan of canna. They have not been great performers for us. I find them to be more of a nuisance than anything else. And they do give us some of these nice yellow flowers, but for the amount of greenery that they put up, the number of flowers is not that great. Right now, they're probably at their peak. As I say, they're very pretty yellow flowers, but we only have about 6 or 7 flowers for this entire area here. And these taller ones with the darker leaves typically give more of a red flower, and you can see one up here. Hard to see because it's still early in the morning, it's not getting much light on it. But that's the only flower on that entire plant. These have tended to struggle. They're not in great soil, which doesn't help anything, but it's something we really can't fix at this point. So we just kind of put up with them and hope for the best. Over here, black-eyed Susans really starting to bloom. They're not quite at their peak, but they will be before long. Things have moved along very quickly. Even just last week, we still had quite a few of the native orange daylilies. They have all finished up very quickly. Seems a little earlier than usual. I don't know, that may just be bad memory on my part, but really the color over in this area has been taken over by the yellow of the black-eyed Susans, and those really are the dominant plant in this area of the garden from this point on the rest of the season. Now up in here on our trellis, we've got just a wide mix of these pink climbing roses. These particular ones are finished right now. There are some blooming up there near the top, and then on this side it's more of the red ones. This was the first year that the two sides met in the middle. I was always hoping we'd get these completely covering the trellis, and they finally did it this year. But we have a mix of clematis, climbing roses, and jasmine that have really kind of taken over this area. It's really grown to the point where you can barely even see our fence. And that's, ultimately, if that's the way you want your garden to grow, then that's kind of ideal. Some people really prefer a more conservative gardening approach. But that's the thing about gardening. You can do it any way that you want. And usually things will do very well. So it's really the key thing, if you have good soil, can't stress that enough, and if you have plenty of light and enough water, and the occasional fertilization and weeding and that sort of thing, usually your garden will do pretty well. Sometimes plant selection will play a role in that, of course. You want to get things that do well in a particular area, and we've really kind of specifically chosen plants that would do well here in South Carolina. Here, more Veronica. For the most part, kind of finishing up. Probably have a couple more weeks of color here, but not a ton. Up here, we have a beautiful cluster of roses. These bright pink roses doing very well. Got some phlox hanging on right here. They're largely finished up, but still going to give us a little bit more color. Big yellow knockout rose here. Was doing better about a week ago. Right now, kind of finished up. Got one bright yellow flower here. Got some nice, I'll bring this one up so we can see it. Gladiolus here. This is kind of an unusual one that we don't see all that often. Normally we buy our glads from the box stores like Walmart or Home Depot and just put them in. These we got from an actual online garden, so they're a little more unique in terms of color and pattern. What else do we have back in here? A few daylilies finishing up, and a tomato that we transplanted back into this area. It's doing very well, and some strawberries behind that are actually putting out some berries for a change. We get strawberry plants that do well. They don't usually give us a lot of berries, unfortunately, but the rest of this part of the bed, not terribly exciting. It's mostly spring plants through here. The daylilies just about finished up. We have a couple more here, but this will be the last week for those. I think this plant finished up yesterday. We've got a few buds down in here. We might still have a handful of flowers next week on our video. Over here, some tomatoes that we put in. We kind of cleared out a little section of the yard where we had some weeds and transplanted these. They're actually starting to give us some little flowers, so before long we're going to actually start to get some cherry and grape tomatoes. Last year we had thousands of them, literally, that we couldn't eat just because there were too many. Here we have another pink knockout rose, one of the 4 that we have in this yard, and this one is fully in bloom again. Bloomed pretty heavily in the early spring, or I'd say mid-spring, and then it went dormant for a little while it was recovering, and now it's going crazy again, and you can see it's going to continue to. If you get a good view of this, you can see all these buds, and the plant is covered with buds like that, so we're going to continue to get flowers probably well into September, maybe even October if we're lucky. Got some more zinnias here. Jenny has grown hundreds of plants from seed this year, and over the last week has just knocked herself out getting them into the yard. Vinca all through here, and these will continue to give us flowers well into the fall. So things going well. A little more color, I wouldn't say little, a lot more color here in the backyard than in the front yard. Front yard was largely done for the year, but here in the back we got a lot going on still. So it's been fun going through that with you. And now the sun is just coming up. It's about 7:30, and so hope it's sunny wherever you are. And until next week, happy gardening.